Asterisk, asterisk, hello to all my bedtime story listeners. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support my channel. Now, let's begin. Tonight, I'll tell you the story of John Adams. Story title: The Gentle Journey of John Adams. A peaceful bedtime story about the life of John Adams, the second U.S. President. Chapter 1, A Boy from Braintree. Long ago, in a quiet village called Braintree, Massachusetts, a boy named John Adams was born into a peaceful world of green hills and simple wooden houses. The year was 1735, and all around him was the sound of crickets humming on warm summer nights and the gentle creak of his family's farmhouse as the wind moved across the hills. Little John was a thoughtful boy, with bright, curious eyes that sparkled like morning dew. Every day, as the sleepy sun rose in the sky, John would wander outside to help his father tend the farm. Together they gathered vegetables, fed the animals, and watched the seasons change in gentle rhythm. When he was very small, his mother would call him in before dusk. "Time for supper, John," she would say, her voice kind and patient. They'd sit together at the wooden table, the candlelight flickering against the walls, making soft dancing shadows. After supper, John loved to curl up by the fire and listen to his father tell stories. Some nights they were simple tales about the farm, other nights they were stories of brave sailors crossing oceans and wise philosophers who spent their lives seeking knowledge. Even as a boy, John loved to listen. Every word was a treasure to him, a spark that would light up his thoughts as he drifted off to sleep under his warm quilt dot sometimes. Before bed, John would sneak outside one last time to look up at the dark sky. The stars glimmered far above him like tiny lanterns. In the silence of the countryside, John felt that the world was vast and full of possibilities. As he grew, his gentle heart and quick mind began to shine. Even though he was small, people could already sense that this boy was special. And as the years passed, John's love of learning only deepened. By the time he was a teenager, he would walk for miles into town just to borrow a new book, often. One filled with stories of faraway places, great thinkers, and the histories of people who had shaped the world. Every story, every thought, was like a stepping stone on the quiet path of his life. And when the day was done, John would lie in his bed, the moonlight spilling softly across his room, and feel thankful for the gentle, happy childhood he was. Living in the village of Braintree, that night, like every night, he drifted into sleep, feeling safe and hopeful, surrounded by the gentle hush of the hills and the distant sound of the ocean waves beyond. And as John slept, the world whispered dreams to him. Dreams of becoming someone who would make a difference, who would one day help shape a new and better world. And so, my dear listener, may you too drift peacefully into your own dreams tonight, wrapped in warmth and wonder. Sleep well. Chapter 2, Studying at Harvard. As John grew into a thoughtful teenager, his love for reading and learning glowed brighter with every passing season. The village of Braintree was small and quiet, but John's dreams felt as vast as the ocean. And so, when the time came for him to go to school at Harvard College in nearby Cambridge, it felt like the start of a great and gentle adventure. Harvard was an old, proud school surrounded by green lawns and grand brick buildings. The halls echoed with the soft footsteps of students and the murmured voices of professors who spoke of history, law, philosophy, and all the mysteries of the world. It was very different from the farm back home, but John felt a thrill in his heart as he walked into this new world. Each morning, John would wake early as the sunlight streamed across his small room. Pulling on his simple jacket, he would make his way to his lectures, the crisp morning air bringing a sense of purpose with every breath. In class, he listened closely, often jotting down careful notes by candlelight long after the day had ended. The professors spoke of great thinkers like Cicero, Aristotle, and Locke, John felt as though he was meeting them too, these giants of thought who had walked the paths of knowledge long before him. When lectures were over, John loved to spend quiet hours in the library. Shelves rose around him like gentle giants, filled with books whose pages whispered of ideas and faraway places. Sometimes he would pause just to breathe in the warm scent of ink and paper, feeling as if the library were a sanctuary, a place where his hopes and dreams could grow dot. And in the evenings, when the sky turned deep purple and the first bright stars appeared, John and his fellow students would take long walks along the Charles River. They spoke softly about what they had learned that day, about justice and liberty, about the world they hoped to help shape. John was often quiet, listening more than he spoke, allowing his thoughts to take gentle root as the months passed and turned into years. John found himself becoming wiser and more confident. Harvard was not just a school to him, it was a place where his heart and mind could blossom. Every lesson gave him a new question to ponder, and every question led him deeper into the gentle and powerful world of learning. And when nighttime fell and John returned to his room, he felt grateful for his family back home, for the professors who guided him, for the friends who walked beside him, and most of all, for the bright future that was slowly unfolding before him like a gentle sunrise at the end of a long, hopeful night. So, my dear listener, as you nestle into your bed tonight, may you too dream of the journeys ahead, of libraries and lantern-lit halls, of kind teachers and new friends. Sleep well and peacefully, knowing that every new day is a gentle path toward discovery. Chapter 3, The Young Lawyer. When John Adams left Harvard, his heart was filled with quiet determination. He had spent years studying law, philosophy, and history, and those ideas had taken root deep inside him. Now, back in Massachusetts, he hoped to use his knowledge to help others and to make his parents proud. John began his training as a young lawyer, working long hours in a small office in Worcester. The days were simple and steady, morning sunlight spilling across his desk, the scratch of his pen as he wrote careful arguments, the faint murmur of voices in the town square outside his window. Each case he took was an opportunity to help someone who needed fairness, someone who deserved to be heard. Some of his cases were small, settling disputes between neighbors or helping a local farmer with a contract. Others were larger and more complicated, making John stay up late into the night, reading by the light of a single glowing candle. Even when his eyes felt tired, his sense of purpose kept him going, as if every gentle turn of a page was a step toward a better world. And as he practiced law, John learned an important lesson. Listening was just as important as speaking, whether it was a worried client telling their story or a judge sharing his thoughts in the quiet of a courthouse. John always listened carefully. It was in these quiet, patient moments that his understanding of people grew, and so did his compassion. Back home, after a long day's work, he would walk slowly along the country roads, breathing in the crisp evening air. Fireflies glimmered like tiny lanterns in the dusk, and owls called softly from the trees. Even though the world was quiet, John felt connected to everyone in it, part of a gentle, unfolding story that was much larger than himself. And at the end of each day, when he finally lay his head upon his pillow, John felt peaceful. The work was challenging and often tiring, but it was good work. It was work that mattered, and so, my dear listener, may you also find comfort tonight in knowing that every small task you do with care and kindness, every gentle thought, every helpful word is like a light in the dark, brightening the world around you as you grow into someone strong, wise, and gentle too, as the stars twinkle outside your window and you close your eyes. Remember that even great journeys begin with a single thoughtful step. Sleep peacefully, and may tomorrow bring you new adventures and new reasons to smile. Chapter 4, Meeting Abigail. As John Adams settled into his work as a young lawyer, his days were full of careful thought and quiet purpose. But life held a gentle surprise for him, one that would grow into a love deeper than he could have ever imagined. That one fine autumn day, John was introduced to a young woman named Abigail Smith. Abigail was kind and clever, with bright, curious eyes that sparkled like morning sunshine. From their very first conversation, John felt at ease with her, as if they had been friends forever. Abigail loved to read just as much as John did, and they soon began exchanging letters filled with thoughts about books, poetry, and the world around them. Many evenings, John would light a small candle at his desk and take up his pen, writing to Abigail as gently and honestly as he could. The ink would trail across the page like a quiet river, carrying his hopes and dreams to her dot, and every time a letter from Abigail arrived, John felt a soft joy bloom in his heart. Her words were warm and wise, her handwriting graceful, and each message was like a lantern glowing warmly in the dark. Even when they were apart, it felt as though they were sitting together by the fire, sharing stories in hushed tones. As the months passed and their bond grew, John began to understand that Abigail was more than a friend. She was someone who could walk beside him in life, someone who believed in him even on his hardest days. When they finally decided to marry, it was a simple and heartfelt ceremony surrounded by family and close friends. That evening, as they stood together beneath a gentle, starry sky, John held Abigail's hand and whispered his promise to care for her always. Abigail smiled warmly in return, her eyes full of trust and gentle light, and so began a new chapter in John's life, one filled with laughter, kindness, and the simple happiness of sharing each day with someone who truly understands your heart. And as you close your eyes tonight, dear listener, may you too feel the comfort of someone who cares for you, whether they are near or far. Let your thoughts drift softly like a quiet breeze through sleepy hills, carrying peace and friendship into your dreams. Sleep well, and may your heart rest easy. Chapter 5, Whispers of Revolution. As John Adams and Abigail settled into their life together, gentle days passed like the turning of the seasons. But beyond their cozy home in Braintree, the world was stirring with new and uncertain winds. The colonies that John loved were becoming restless. The people of Massachusetts and all across America began to speak in hushed tones about the unfair rules set by a faraway king. Taxes were high, and their voices weren't being heard. In village meeting houses and along cobblestone streets, whispers of change began to grow. John listened carefully to these voices. Ever since his days at Harvard, and as a young lawyer, he had believed in fairness and justice. It felt clear to him that every person deserved a say in how they were governed, and that no one should live under harsh laws they hadn't agreed to. And so, as winter gave way to spring, John began attending town meetings and writing thoughtful essays for the local newspapers. Night after night, he sat by candlelight, choosing his words with care. Every sentence was gentle but strong, carrying a quiet power that reached the hearts of his readers. Abigail would often sit by his side as he wrote. Occasionally, she'd pour him a cup of warm tea and listen as he read his drafts aloud. Her steady encouragement gave him strength, and together they dreamed of a future where their children might grow up in a land that was truly free. And though John Adams was a serious man, he never wished for violence. Deep in his heart, he hoped for a peaceful path to freedom, one built on reason, courage, and honesty. Still, as the years passed and tensions grew, John knew that a great struggle was coming. The gentle hills of Massachusetts had seen many quiet days, but they would soon witness history unfolding. And as John tucked his children into bed each night, kissed Abigail goodnight, and finally lay his head on his pillow, he thought of all the quiet, hopeful hearts like his own, hearts who longed for a better world. And tonight, dear listener, May you also feel that gentle hope as you drift into your dreams, knowing that brave and caring people like John Adams have walked this earth, lighting the way toward a brighter tomorrow. Rest well and dream of kind hearts and peaceful days ahead. Chapter 6, Signing the Declaration. The years of whispered hopes and gentle debates had now grown into something larger, a heartfelt call for freedom that could no longer be ignored. It was the summer of 1776, and John Adams found himself far from home in the bustling halls of Philadelphia. The streets outside were alive with the voices of people who longed for change. And inside a quiet room of brick and wood, John and his fellow delegates gathered together, their hearts beating with the weight of a moment that would live forever in history. Each morning, as sunlight filtered through the tall windows, John took his seat at a long wooden table alongside other leaders from the 13 colonies. They spoke in low, serious tones, writing drafts and offering careful thoughts about the future of their new nation. John's voice was steady but passionate. Even when tired, he spoke with the quiet strength of someone who believed deeply in fairness and freedom. Night after night, long past sunset, he worked by candlelight with Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and others, shaping the words that would one day be called the Declaration of Independence. And finally, on a warm day in July, John stood up, pen in hand, and carefully wrote his name upon the parchment alongside the signatures of his fellow patriots. The ink glistened like a promise, and as it dried, a peaceful sort of determination filled the room, as though they could all feel history shifting gently into place. When the signing was over, John took a deep breath and thought of Abigail and their children back home in Massachusetts. It was for them, and for all future generations, that he had chosen this path. Even though there would be difficult days ahead, John felt a quiet pride in knowing that he had done his part. That night, as the city settled into slumber, John found a quiet place to rest. Outside his window, the crickets sang softly, just as they had in his childhood home, and a gentle breeze whispered through the trees. John closed his eyes with a hopeful heart, knowing that his name was now forever part of a story larger than himself, one of courage, compassion, and the gentle power of belief. And as you close your eyes too, dear listener, may you also dream of that kind of quiet strength. May you sleep peacefully knowing that even small hands can shape a better world when guided by caring hearts and honest purpose. Chapter 7, Life as a Diplomat. After the bold and hopeful signing of the Declaration of Independence, John Adams' journey took him far across the ocean. The new nation needed friends and allies in distant lands, and so John left his beloved home and set sail for Europe. The voyage was long and sometimes rough. Wind and waves rocked the wooden ship day and night, and John would often stand on deck, wrapped in his coat, watching the silver moonlight ripple across the dark water. The sea was vast and mysterious, but John felt a quiet sense of purpose, a gentle resolve that kept him company like a trusted friend. When at last he reached Europe, John was greeted by grand cities and people who spoke unfamiliar languages. The halls of power in Paris and Amsterdam were filled with elegant tapestries and chandeliers that glowed like tiny stars. But even amid all the splendor, John never forgot who he was or where he had come from. Each day, he met with kings, ministers, and scholars to speak on behalf of America. He listened carefully to their thoughts and answered with calm honesty. John knew that friendships between countries were built the same way as friendships between people, with trust, patience, and kind words. When the day's work was over, John would take a quiet walk along cobblestone streets, past gardens humming with birdsong and rivers shimmering in the afternoon light. Often, he would stop in a small cafe and write letters home to Abigail, telling her about all that he had seen, but most of all, telling her how much he missed her and the children. And though Europe was far from Massachusetts, John carried his family in his heart wherever he went. Every gentle breeze and every shining star above him reminded him of their love. And as he laid his head down each night in his small guest house, a peaceful feeling would wash over him, knowing that even though oceans and miles might separate them, they were forever close in spirit. And so tonight, dear listener, may you too feel that gentle kind of comfort, knowing that those who care for you are never truly far away. Let the stars overhead watch over you kindly, let the breeze through your window soothe you, and may your dreams carry you safely into a restful, peaceful sleep. Chapter 8, Becoming President. After years spent serving his country as a diplomat overseas, John Adams finally returned home to America. The land was forever changed. The colonies were now the United States, and a sense of new hope filled every village and town. Abigail and their children embraced him warmly, and John felt the gentle happiness of being back where he belonged. But there was one more important role that history had in store for him. George Washington, the first president, decided to retire. The people looked to John as someone they could trust. They remembered his thoughtful voice during the Revolution, his careful work overseas, and his steady devotion to fairness and justice. And so, in 1797, John Adams was chosen to be the second president of the United States. Being president was an honor, but it was also a heavy responsibility. John rose early each morning in the grand house that was still being built, what would one day be called the White House. Outside, gentle breezes stirred the trees along Pennsylvania Avenue as he thought carefully about the decisions ahead. John never stopped working for peace. Even when tensions rose between countries, he wrote letters and held meetings, hoping to guide America with patience and wisdom. Late into the evenings, by the soft light of oil lamps, he would review papers and listen to his trusted advisor's thoughts, always trying to do what was best for the people. And though he was often busy, John never forgot to write to Abigail. Her gentle encouragement in those letters was like a bright lantern in the dark, keeping him grounded and strong. Even from afar, they shared their hopes and fears, drawing strength from one another, just as they always had. When the day's work was finally done, John would stand by a quiet window and look up at the sky, knowing that countless other people were looking up too, all under the same peaceful stars. And as you close your eyes tonight, dear listener, may you also feel that sense of quiet purpose and gentle strength. Remember that even the most important work can be done with a kind heart and a steady spirit. Let the night embrace you softly, and may you sleep peacefully, knowing that the world keeps turning gently, guided by caring hands and hopeful hearts. Chapter 9, Returning Home. After his time as president came to a close, John Adams was ready to leave the busy halls of leadership behind and return to the gentle, familiar life that had shaped him. Together with Abigail, he made his way back to their cherished home in Quincy, Massachusetts, a quiet place they called Peacefield. Peacefield was surrounded by gardens and orchards that John loved to tend. Each morning, the sun would rise over the hills and gently light up the green leaves and blooming flowers. Birds sang soft, cheerful tunes, and the air smelled sweet and fresh. John delighted in these simple days. He would wake early, pull on his comfortable clothes, and walk slowly through his orchard. There, under the apple and pear trees, he would listen to the rustle of leaves and feel the warmth of the morning sunshine. Every gentle breeze seemed to whisper that it was good to be home. In the afternoons, John often sat with Abigail on the porch. They talked quietly together, sometimes about the past, sometimes about the present, and sometimes about nothing at all. Abigail's gentle voice was a familiar and comforting sound, like the lapping of waves against the shore. And when their grandchildren came to visit, John would share stories by the fire or walk with them in the orchard, answering their questions and pointing out the shapes of birds and clouds. The laughter of children filled the house like a light, joyful melody. Each evening, As the sun began to sink and the world grew soft and dusky, John felt his heart fill with gratitude. It was a gentle, peaceful chapter of life, one where each small, kind moment was cherished like a precious gift. And as you close your eyes tonight, dear listener, may you also feel the quiet joy of home and the gentle comfort of people you love. Let the sweetness of this thought cradle you into restful dreams, like the hush of a gentle breeze carrying you to sleep under a peaceful sky. Chapter 10, A Gentle Farewell. The years at Peacefield passed like a quiet stream, steady and calm. John Adams, now an old man, spent his days surrounded by the simple things he loved most: his garden, his books, and the gentle company of family. Each morning, he would sit by the window and watch the sun rise over the fields, the light casting a golden glow upon the land he had tended for so many years. The birds would sing their soft morning songs, and John would smile, thankful for another day of peace. In the afternoons, he would walk slowly through the orchard, leaning on his cane, pausing to rest beneath the wide branches of his favorite tree. The breeze would rustle the leaves above him, and he would feel as if the world itself were wishing him well. John spent much of his time writing letters, his hand now slower, his words filled with kindness and wisdom. He reflected on his long journey, from a boy in Braintree to a man who had helped shape a nation. And yet, through all the great moments of history, it was the small, gentle moments that stayed with him most. Abigail's laughter, the sound of his children's footsteps, the warmth of a quiet home. And then, on a summer day in 1826, as the nation celebrated 50 years since the Declaration of Independence, John Adams took his final peaceful breath. He left this world as he had lived, with courage, with kindness, and with deep love for his family and his country. The gentle hills of Massachusetts cradled him in their embrace, and the stars above shone softly as if to honor a life well lived. And now, dear listener, as this story comes to a close, may you too feel the peace that filled John Adams' heart. May you rest tonight knowing that kindness, courage, and love are the truest gifts we can give the world. Close your eyes. Let the quiet of the night wrap around you like a soft blanket and drift into the sweetest of dreams. Good night and sleep well.